Good morning, adventurers, and welcome back to my channel. Today is starting off great. I woke up this morning to a couple of text messages from some friends in our friend group, and it's so exciting to see that everybody's going to be here very soon. I talked to one in particular, Lady Bug Out, and I haven't gotten to see her since Vanmas. So I am so excited to finally see Dee again because she has been working on her build, and this will be the first time I get to see it fully built out. And so that's going to be spectacular. I am so excited for her with the new van because I know that going through the process of getting the new van and kitting out the new van to how she was wanting it to be has been an ongoing journey. And so finally we'll all get to see it in person, and it's so exciting. But she's not here yet. She's going to be here a little bit earlier than some of the people, but not yet. So this might be my final day of not having Dee around for a little bit. She's going to be here for a short time, and I'm going to just latch onto that friendship and be so excited about being able to hang on and just be like, yay, I get to see my friend again. That's the wild thing about being a nomad. A lot of people ask constantly, are you ever lonely being a nomad? And so I think today let's talk about that. Why are we lonely, or why are we not lonely? I haven't done a video about this in quite some time, and some of my perspectives have changed just a little bit. So I think this is a good time to just talk about it as I'm putting the van together this morning. And you know, that's one of the things that so many people are concerned about. And I have some interesting perspectives, we'll say. So let's get some things organized and we'll talk about this. First and foremost, a lot of people ask constantly, is it sad or lonely to be by yourself as a solo female? And I have traveled a lot by myself. The first 3 years I tent camped completely and totally, for the most part, by myself. Let me tell you, there were some moments where I was kind of going through the mental junk of life. And what I mean by the mental junk of life is when I first started out tent camping, I stepped completely away from what I knew in Dallas. Dallas was where I lived. I lived there for several years. I had a very fun life there, but at the same time, sometimes whenever you are in a single place for a certain amount of time, you gain a whole bunch of like extra stuff that attaches to you that isn't necessarily all like you. Does that make sense? So one of the things that I really needed to do was take some time to take a step back and figure out what was and was not me. Whenever you are kind of removing yourself from anything that might be a weird situation or like a stressful situation or something where you feel like you're just trying to get back to, you know, the root of it, you take that time to take a breath. And in doing so, it's almost better to have silence, even though that silence can be deafening. A lot of times I would find myself riding around without a radio or anything, just in my thoughts. And in doing so, I was able to sort out the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. I was able to take ownership of anything that I needed to take ownership of in my life. I needed to challenge myself, and I also needed to figure out where my self-growth was going to come from. And so for 3 full years, that's what I focused on, all alone. And so for anyone who is saying, I don't know if I can do this, I understand. It is not the easiest road to go down, to confront yourself and realize that you are both really great and capable, but also that you have these things that you can work on, and then you work on those things. And so I did that, and in doing so, it made me where I did not have any problem with being alone. And for the first time ever, I felt like I could confidently go places completely and totally alone. I didn't need validation. I didn't need people. I didn't need somebody to hype me up. I didn't need someone to tell me that I was right or wrong. I didn't need someone for comfort. I could just be, and I was okay with that. But furthermore, I decided in that time, those were the times where I could sit and really reflect on the things I liked about me and the things I didn't like about me. And the things I didn't like, guess what? You can't necessarily change those things if they're the fabric of who you are, but you can work to accept those things and be okay with it. And I think that that's the bigger thing that a lot of people don't do. We don't want to face ourselves head on because that's kind of scary in itself. But once you do, it really is helpful because then you don't necessarily need anyone. Now, the presence of other people is still great, but you don't need it the way that you did. And I think that as a society, that is very scary for a lot of people because a lot of people, as much as they might be independent, they still do need routine or to see people or to validate something in some capacity. But once you get to the place where you're just like, you know what? I'm okay. Like, I can't control certain things. I'm okay with that. Then that is a very scary version of you to the outward world. Not because it's like, oh no, I'm the boogeyman, but because realistically, if you're empowered, then you don't have to worry about all of the extra noise that the world typically puts into your head. See, a lot of times when people don't feel comfortable themselves, they project it at you. And when they do, it gets into your head and it forms a little brain worm. Like somebody could say something as simple as, I don't like your window covers. Like, how does that affect you? But at the same time, to a person who hasn't had those real life thoughts with themselves, where they've confronted that I don't need to make sure it's okay with you to do the things that I want to do, that starts a little tiny thing right here. And at the time that you're sleeping or trying to sleep, you'll just be laying awake saying, I wonder why they don't like my window covers. Like, do I not have good window covers? Should I get different window covers? You see how silly that is? It's something like that. But usually those kind of attacks aren't about your window covers. They're about something about you. They'll tell you something that they don't like about you as a person that just etches in there and then starts to cause this chaos and confusion. And in doing so, it turns into this weird thing that then makes you feel insecure. Now, most people, the way that they deal with this insecurity is to cloud their brain, to be around people, to socialize, to get around the yes men who do like your window covers, so to speak. And in doing that, that's great because you do have your hype squad, and that is really important. But also, you can't let that hype squad dictate how you feel when those people are not around. And that's why I said sometimes just being away from people and confronting the thing that made you be worried about it in the first place is so important. And it is very hard to do because you have to sit there and have that little moment with yourself saying, hey, I let this person get in my head and I need to work on that because I need to be confident enough in whatever it is that I'm doing to not worry about that. And that is one aspect of loneliness. Now, I know this aspect isn't going to be something that rings a bell for everyone because not everyone feels as though they have this moment, but we all do kind of underneath the surface. We've all had something that's made us uncomfortable. We've all had something that when somebody said it, it just sits with us wrong and we just kind of dwell. And all of those things are things that as humans we go through. And because of those things, a lot of times we do feel more isolated instead of feeling like we are just capable of everything. Now, whenever I first started traveling, I went through all of those things. Even though I was a confident human, I still peeled apart the layers of the onion and figured out what it was that was really getting to me so I could make sure to either avoid those things or empower myself in those moments. And by doing that, I realized one of the things that I had always struggled with, and this sounds super silly, is I always struggled with just going to a restaurant and sitting down by myself. I felt it to be quiet and kind of awkward. I would be cumbersome with my thumbs on my phone because I didn't really know what to do. And it wasn't because I didn't enjoy going out to eat. It was because I felt weird being by myself. So in doing the internal work, so to speak, I sat there and I realized, okay, well, that's one of the things I have to fix. I have to be able to not only go and eat by myself, but feel good doing it. So I started creating challenges for myself. And those challenges involved my YouTube channel. If I was going to a restaurant, okay, I'm not going to just sit here by myself. I'm going to talk about my food. I'm going to make it really obvious that I am here by myself, which draws attention to me, but not in a way that's necessarily always positive. But I'm going to deal with the fact that people are then eyeballing me, and I'm not going to be worried about it because I am living my most authentic life. And once I started to do that, I started to realize that I no longer worried about what people were saying behind the scenes. I started to notice that I no longer was concerned with how people were perceiving me and how in the moments of discomfort that I was reacting. Instead, I was reacting much, much differently than you would expect. I started to lean into it. I started to get more confident. I started to open up conversations with strangers that I probably would have never spoken with. And in doing so, that gave me an outlet for me to connect with others. I think a lot of people miss out on the fact that whenever they're traveling, especially if they're full-time, they're walking away from the known and they're going into the unknown. And because a lot of us have friends in the known as opposed to the unknown, we feel like we can't carry those friendships with us, but you can. Connection is so important. And if we have connection with a person, it shouldn't be limited to just when it's convenient. Sometimes if it's a genuine connection, we should be able to reach out even if we're 100 miles away, 1,000 miles away in another country, and we should still be able to have that friendship. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people kind of crave, is still having those human connections. And just because you can't have them in a face-to-face way does not mean you cannot have them. If your friends aren't cool with you traveling, those aren't your friends. I have friends from Dallas who I know thought I was cuckoo bananas whenever I got into the tent, especially, but then whenever I got into the van also, and they realized, okay, this is just the thing. But we still are friends. And the reason we're still friends is because our friendships weren't based off of surface level stuff. It was based off the real stuff. So I can call them up at any time and be like, hey, let's just check in, see how you are. Are you okay? Cool. I'm glad to hear XYZ is going on in your life. This is what's going on in my life. And it works out really, really well. And I think that those are the true friendships. Now, perhaps one of the bigger questions though is, do you have true friendships or surface level? Now that is another part of that internal work that you have to figure out. See, the interesting thing is, once you start to figure out your friendship levels, you'll start to know what's going on with your loneliness scale when it comes to the people who are already in your life. If you realize that most of the people who were already in your life weren't actual good friends, they were surface level friends, yes, there's going to be this moment where you start to spin out a little bit like Fred Flintstone's feet while he's powering the car. But that's whenever it opens up you to being able to see, okay, well, I need these things out of a friendship. And in doing so, you can set your own parameters and guidelines for what you're willing to accept and what you want out of those friendships. And then you can start meeting people out in the wild, so to speak. Now, the best places to meet people are going to be meetups and gatherings, because those are places that there's tons of different personalities and tons of different nomads. This is a place that you're going to find more like-minded people because they're already in vehicles, so they're going to be traveling, and so their adventure style is going to be more similar to yours than a person who's in a sticks and bricks. However, at the same time, that doesn't mean that every person is going to be your high-five friend, and that's okay too. See, in all reality, people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And when the people who are there for a season clear out and make room for your lifetime friends, it's a pretty cool thing. At the same time, you're not going to see it coming most of the time. And so whenever you are out there, if you are just solo dolo like I was for 3 years, when it's time for you to find those people will be put into your life. It sounds weird and super cliche, but it's kind of the way of how it goes. I met all of the people that I know that I still hang out with today within a very short amount of time, and it was right after I finally had gotten through the junk in my life and I was receptive to having new friends. And I wasn't going to sit there and be like, okay, these are cool people, but I'm going to judge them based on the other things that I've had in my life. Instead, I met them kind of where they were. We're all in the same place together. We bonded over the similar thing, and then from there we developed amazing friendships. And I think that that's what a lot of people just kind of miss out on, is the fact that a lot of times people try to plug and play friendships. And that's not necessarily how it works. If you plug and play a friendship, it's still going to be very surface. If you have to quantify a friendship by how you know them or what they do for you or where you met, and that's your entire descriptor every time you talk to that person or introduce that person, that's a very surface level friendship still. And it's not going to net the same results as a very organic friendship. So for example, whenever I talk about my friends, I, yes, did meet them all at different meetups along the way, but that's the least interesting part of our friendships. That's just how we met. Our friendships themselves have developed over the years, and in doing so, we have like inside stories, we have funny behind the scenes, we have silly places that we've met up at, crazy things that have happened, and still none of those things are how I describe my friends. I just say they're my friends because that's what they are. In any other walk of life, if you quantify a friendship by saying, oh yeah, this is my friend from work, notice from work means that it's not super organic because you only know that person because of that one thing, and if that thing goes away, that friendship's probably going to drift a little bit. If you quantify a friendship by saying, oh yeah, we met because of this, and that's how you describe that person every single time, it's not organic. Now, if you were to meet a person and you were trying to explain your friendships to these people, and then they were to ask, oh, where did you guys meet? Totally different, totally valid. But for example, whenever I met Charles and Tony, I met them at a meetup, but I don't sit there and say, oh, this is my friend Charles and Tony, we met at a meetup. Does that make sense? So I think that that's also part of it, is learning the difference between surface level friendships and true friendships. And once you start to figure out those things, then you'll start to realize that your quality of life makes it where you're very, very minimally ever lonely. Now, I know a lot of people crave that need for others to be in community and to do activities together. And again, that's where I say, if you have a group of people that you have met, I like group camping. You get to know your friends really, really well whenever you group camp. And sometimes those friends are people that are going to stick around. Sometimes those people are going to be those reasons, season or lifetimes. They might just be a reason to teach you something or a season that departs. And that's okay also. The best way to figure that out is just to sit there and put yourself out there in different groups. Again, go to the meetups, go to the places where lots of people camp and they have like different kinds of activities. Go to a community that you're interested in and read their community board. Go to a community event, meet other people. If you have a special skill or talent that you would like to expand upon, like painting, for example, go to a small community and see if they have like a painting group that meets on like a Tuesday. Go meet those ladies or the men that are there and you could form a friendship. Even if you are nomadic, you can have have friends in different places. We all have this thing called a cell phone, guys. And because of that, it helps you to have this connection. And I know that a lot of people would prefer an in-person connection. But in order to have an in-person connection, sometimes you have to have a digital connection. You have to be able to get in touch with people to plan those things. Now, my friends and I, we don't get to see each other all the time, which is why my time with them is so important. In fact, one of the things that I look forward to every year is doing my Vanmas event, because that's when I get to see all my friends that can come. Sometimes friends can't come, and that's okay, but we make sure that we talk to each other and wish each other Merry Christmas and keep that connection going just the same. So just because friends can't always come doesn't mean that they're not your friends. And I think that that's the bigger thing also. It's just finding ways that you can have those connections via digital or in person. And that takes away the loneliness from the friendship aspect of that. But there's a few other things that people regard when it comes to loneliness, and I want to talk about those too. But before we do, let's check some batteries. Start the van, check some batteries. Okay, we're at 86%. We're pumping in just under 100. Here we have 81 and 70, so we're good. See, loneliness can also be a very personal, sad thing. Loneliness can be that you're in a remote space and you're staying the 14 days and you just feel like you have no one. You might not have great cell service, so you can't reach out to the friends. You might be feeling down in the dumps. You might even not be feeling well. And in those cases, it can be very much an isolating time. And in those times, you have to find ways to get out of your bubble and get out of your head. Sometimes online social interaction is great, but if you don't have cell service, that doesn't work. If you don't have your friends directly around you, again, that's not gonna work. So what do you do then? My best suggestion always has been to move away from your campsite and just go into town. Go into town and talk to people. And I know it's really intimidating to talk to random strangers, but at the same time, you can have personal interactions that are very small that aren't scary. For example, if I go to a national park and I see a ranger at a kiosk, I'm gonna say, hey, I'm gonna ask them for a trail suggestion, or I'm gonna talk to them about, is there anything I should know? And as silly as it is, that very small interaction can really pivot your day from having no interaction to having some interaction, which fuels your brain to not feel like you are alone. If I go to a restaurant, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna talk to my waitress in a nice way, and I'm going to say complimentary things that's gonna make her day and speak life into her. But at the same time, little does she know, just by talking to me, it's making me feel good too. So it's that easy. If you go to a grocery store and you're getting your groceries at the checkout line, just casually talk to the person. Don't be a weirdo who's doing the most or sitting there holding up the line, but just have an interaction. Every interaction that you have is going to fill up something inside of you that feels like it's missing, and it will make it less lonely. If you continue to do those kinds of things throughout, not only are you going to come across as super friendly, because obviously, yeah, you're being super friendly, but also people are going to chat with you and you're going to get some interactions. And in doing so, that's going to make you feel like you aren't just like this floating planet in the universe by yourself out there. You're going to be an isolated piece of a bigger thing. You're going to be over here, but you're in the same solar system as someone now. And I think that that's a huge way that you can interact with others. Additionally, if you have an online community, again, going back to online, find an online community of people you can talk to. I belong to 4 or 5 different Facebook groups of women who travel, as well as people who go to strange attractions and stuff like that. And worst case scenario, if I am needing some kind of like interaction with life, I can just go on there and chat away with people, and we can all like chat with each other about various things. Anything from the one group about women is like women's safety on the road. We talk about all of our safety stuff. Really cool. One of the groups, the one that's about going to strange attractions and stuff, they have all sorts of suggestions, so you can go in there. I belong to an NV 200 group from the Great Britain area, which is super cool. And I talk to people abroad about different things about my van. And as silly as that seems to just have those kind of interactions, if you fill your life with interaction of some kind, your body feels less lonely because it no longer feels like it's by itself. It feels like you have community, even if it is just online. And that's better than being solo dolo. Now, there are people out there who struggle with mental health, and loneliness and mental health can go to a lot of different directions. So let's talk about that one too. I have always said here, you have to take care of yourself and put into your tank, which is part of being aware of your own mental health. If you are just giving and giving and giving and giving, and people are taking and taking and taking, then at some point it feels very draining, and that can feel isolating and lonely. So for yourself, if you are a person who is a giver, find a balance. You have to find balance in your life so that you can protect your mental health. If you're seeing things that don't align with who you are as a person, then just you have to find a way to push them out in a way that's safe for you, so to speak. So like if you're having a bunch of problems where you're struggling and the people around you are just feeding into toxic behavior and they're not putting into your tank, and instead they're just trying to suck every little last bit away, that can be very lonely feeling because you're not getting the back and forth, the ebb and the flow of a true friendship. And in doing so, that's going to defeat you, and mentally that is so bad for someone who is struggling with their mental health. So what you're going to have to do is find a way for you to again face those things within yourself that tell you, I deserve better than this, and I deserve people who are in my corner, not as a situational corner, not as an unbalanced friendship, but people who are genuinely there for me. And so because I'm not getting that, even though it will be isolating to go off on my own, I have to do that for me because ultimately I will be healthier if I do. That's super scary for people, and I totally get that. But also, again, at the end of the day, loneliness comes from within. It's a feeling. It's a feeling of emptiness. And if we have a feeling of emptiness, we have to find a way to fill that emptiness, not with other people or other ideas, but with things we can do positively for ourselves. So can it be lonely? Sure, it can. A lot of people struggle with loneliness, and in doing so, they really have a hard time adjusting to van life. And so in those cases, I definitely encourage you to take those quiet moments, feel yourself out, know yourself. And a lot of people think that they know themselves, but until you travel by yourself, you really don't know yourself. Try to listen to your thoughts with no background noise. Do some things in the quiet of the outdoors. Just listen to the birds chirp, do some internal work, journal a little bit, find a hobby that brings you joy and fill some of that loneliness time with that. And I think you'll start to realize that, yeah, it would be nice to be able to share some things with other people, but it's not necessary if they're not the right people, because it's more important to put the right people in our lives than the wrong ones just because we're lonely. Don't get quantifying friends. If someone quantifies you, you deserve better. Find people who genuinely bring out the best in you and you bring out the best in them, and that you guys can sit there and laugh and joke and be silly and not take life super seriously and not judge one another. And then you'll find that those friendships will carry for many months without seeing friends. For example, again, I haven't seen Dee since Christmas, but I don't feel like we've missed a beat. We text each other, and whenever I do get to see her, it's the most magical time. We have such a good time. Charles and Tony I hadn't seen since we were in the desert. When I got here, we hadn't missed a beat. We picked right up, we sat down in the circle, we caught everybody up on what was going on, and life just continued to move on. And we laugh every night, we listen to music, we have a good time. Same thing with Anthony. We sat and caught up as soon as I got here, and like I feel like I am caught up on what's going on in his life, he's caught up on my life, and it was so nice just to connect. And it wasn't a quantifier of, oh, these are my friends because, or these are my friends and. It was just, these are my friends. And so the loneliness goes out the window because it starts to be incentivized to, oh, but I get to see them soon. And then time just goes. Most everyone here knows time flies, and it's not just when you're having fun. Sometimes then it's when you're not having fun. We hope that those moments pass quickly when it's not fun, but at the same time, we have to cherish them whenever they are fun. So when you are around your people, make all the memories. Memories will keep you going. They'll have conversations that pop up about them later on, and in doing so, it allows you to just have this really fulfilling life, even when you are in bouts of what normally would be considered loneliness or solo time. Solo travel is what you make it, and you have to be mentally prepared to solo travel without all of the extras that you're used to, and especially going from a super social place to a very isolating place. That is a very big swing there, so you have to be okay with that swing. But with that, I hope this answers that question for you guys. Loneliness is a frame of mind, but there are ways to combat it. Again, go to events, meet your people, meet your actual people, not the ones that you think are your people because you met them somewhere and they might do a hobby that is similar to yours. Meet the people that actually not only have those characteristics, but that you actually bond with, and then get to know them better. Find out all the weird. Love that weird. And if you don't love the weird, those probably aren't your people. But overall, have fun. And when you are by yourself, go into town, hang out, talk to people, be social, be kind, and as always, remember, we're not here for a long time, but we are here for a good time. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.